Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back again. Just taking a couple of minutes until it's class time. But thanks as usual for being here, and we'll be underway in just a few moments. Hey Miguel, good to see you. I just got your homework, so thanks. Hi Adeline, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Cool. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going really well with you guys. Hey. Hello, hello. Oh, well, one way or the other, I guess it's in there, so not to worry. Hey, Caitlin. What's up? So, Bobby, I don't really know. Yeah, I guess I need to check in on some pop culture. Is this somebody I should know? If so, you got to tell me about him, and I'll definitely check it out. Hey, everybody. A good rapper? Okay. All right. Always looking for more of that stuff. I'll check it out. Thank you. For sure. Okay, guys, welcome back. It's 2:30, so thanks so much for being here again. As you guys know or should know, the second homework assignment was due today, so you should have already sent it to me. If you haven't, make sure you go ahead and just do it right away. If it comes in after the class period, then I'm thinking it's going to start accumulating some late deduction. But anyway, it's better to turn it in late than not at all. So if you didn't get a chance to submit it to me yet, make sure to do it as soon as possible to prevent any further late credit from accruing. On Friday, I'm going to send the answer key for that, and I'm going to have the midterms done also. So it's kind of going to be like a little document dump in a way. Like I'll have all the midterms and the second homework graded. The second homework is very fast for me to grade because, as you guys know, there's no real comment. It's just, did you write the right word down or not? So I'll have all the homeworks fully scored with the midterms too. And on Friday, I'll send a message to you guys that you can then check on your scores for anything that we've done. I would like to do that, Jillian, but they're both kind of laying over there sleeping. I don't know, they're too peaceful right now. But especially Peachy, sometimes she gets excited in the middle of these lectures. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'd like to do that. Yeah, so anyway, second homework, that's all now hopefully behind us. And what we're looking forward to is the quiz that comes on Monday. So this next meeting is not a class lecture time, it's just a quiz. So it's going to be distributed in the same way that we did the other quiz and the midterm. I'll send you guys the quiz form at class time, and then you'll have until the expiration of class time to send back your completed answers for the quiz. Now, today, the syllabus, as you see, just talks about reviewing the different argument fallacies. And so that's what we're going to do. Did we get to the last one last time? I feel like we might not have. Now my memory, I need to double check. But what was the last fallacy mentioned on Monday's meeting? Let me know if anyone can tell me that. I'm pretty, yeah, good, Kimberly. But what was the last one that we did talk about? Was it the, here, I'll go into my notes. We get as far as the hasty generalization. Okay, so I did not mean that. Sorry, I meant to say we got as far as slippery slope. Okay, so you're telling me about a slippery slope, but we haven't talked about the naturalistic fallacy, or did we? Somebody said naturalistic fallacy. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but have we discussed the naturalistic fallacy? No. Okay, good. So let me just help you talk with the naturalistic fallacy. There's 8 different fallacies of unwarranted assumption. Am I getting that right, or is it 7? So there's, 7 fallacies of unwarranted assumption, 8 fallacies of relevance, and 5 fallacies of ambiguity. So we got as far as slippery slope fallacy, and we have one more of these unwarranted assumption fallacies to finish up that whole category. So one more fallacy of unwarranted assumption is called the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so what the naturalistic fallacy is, and the name kind of is a giveaway, this is when a person assumes that whatever is natural must be good, and whatever is somehow not natural or unnatural must be bad. That's not always true. That's a fallacious way of reasoning, but we see this a lot, so that's a fallacy, naturalistic fallacy. Okay, the unwarranted assumption that anything somehow claimed to be natural is a good thing, and anything that they say is somewhat unnatural or somehow is a bad thing. Okay, so like, say for example, a person says to you, why do people complain about people using narcotic drugs like cocaine? I mean, because if you really look at it, cocaine, it just grows out of the ground. It grows from the coca leaf. And that's put here by nature. That's given to us by God. So it can't be a bad thing. So don't tell me it's bad for me to use cocaine. I mean, but obviously that's a bad argument. Just because something's natural does not mean that it can't have harmful properties for you, that it can't be addictive, or that it can't, be destructive of your health. So that would be a bad appeal to the naturalistic fallacy. Not everything that's natural is good. Not everything that's unnatural is bad. So suppose that somebody, they were diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. And the most effective method of treatment for them would be to go and to get chemotherapy or radiation or something, right? But they say, radiation, come on, that doesn't grow on trees. I mean, that's a man-made thing. That's tinkering around with the world of nature. We should stick to whatever natural remedies there are. So I'm just going to, I don't know, have a probiotic diet and a holistic health regimen, and maybe that'll be my course of care and treatment. But of course, in that way, the person might have missed their best opportunity to actually go into remission and to beat cancer because they're thinking in these ways that anything somehow unnatural is bad. Same with like vaccines. People do this too much, unfortunately. They'll say, well, they say to get a vaccine for me and for my kids and that it's going to be safer for them and for society as a general matter. But these vaccines, they don't, grow on trees or come up out of the ground. They're weird, man-made, unnatural things, and so they can't be good for you. But obviously, you know how dangerous it can be when people are, anti-vaccine, and that undermines the health of the whole society. And we can continue. Like sometimes advertisers and marketers will make use of the naturalistic fallacy because they know that we're many of us caught up in this way of thinking. So you'll see even very unhealthy things marketed to you as natural. Like you see a cigarette company and it says organic tobacco, all natural, as if this doesn't have the same, carcinogens and tar and nicotine that's addictive that any other brand would have. So just because something's labeled natural or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that it's a better product for you, or that a comparable product that doesn't have that type of labeling is worse for you. So do you kind of understand what I'm saying? I mean, if you really think about it, nature doesn't necessarily always have the best interests of a particular life form in mind, right? If it was up to nature, you know, we would never even live as long as we do today. It's only because of our intervention into nature that we've been able to like surpass the normal human lifespan that used to exist, right? In nature, we don't have vaccines, we don't have medicine, we don't have technology. So you should just shut this computer off right now because this is something that's unnatural. The electronics involved and the technological broadband communication that we're employing now, this wasn't put here by nature, it was created by people, so it must be bad. But obviously, I'm being facetious. You all know that the wide range of telecommunications and other forms of human technology make our lives better, easier, and longer lasting. So it doesn't mean that everything natural is bad or that everything natural is good. You have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. If somebody's rubbing poison ivy all over themselves and they say, well, poison ivy comes from the ground and it's natural, they're doing themselves harm, even though it's natural. And a person taking a Tylenol or something to relieve headache is doing something that's not exactly natural in a sense, but it's good for them. So understand that is a common kind of fallacy. And that's the last of the unwarranted assumption fallacies. Let me look in the book and see if there's more material on that to add to the discussion that we just had here. Okay, well, they go for some tough ones, like somebody making the case against, same-sex relationships and stuff. Somebody will say, well, they can't lead to children, and reproduction is natural. That's the natural reason that we have these sexual organs. So it must be wrong and bad for people to do that. But it's just as much unnatural for people to get up and drive a car or for us to develop any number of technological systems that we do develop. So picking on a behavior or practice or particular concept just because it's somehow described in some manner as unnatural is a fallacy. So another case, somebody could say, well, why should we tell people to stop hunting so many of these endangered animals? I mean, because hunting is natural. If you look at nature, the animals hunt each other. So if we're just doing what the animals do, how could that be wrong? Well, of course, we human beings, first of all, are not exactly the toughest of all animals. We don't have like big fangs and talons and stuff. So we're not really built biologically as the alpha predator in that sense. But we do have, a big, intelligent brain and the ability to create tools. Nonetheless, just because we engage in a behavior that's widespread throughout nature doesn't necessarily mean that it's contributing to the health or safety or well-being of ourselves or of other creatures. So anyway, people sometimes talk about the development of artificial intelligence. Like, why are we building these smart computers that can compose music or write scripts or engage in realistic communication with you like a chatbot? That's not natural, these thinking machines, and if we keep doing it, we're going to end up with some dystopian nightmare where they're taking us over. Anyway, all of these different examples can be seen as a naturalistic fallacy. Nature hits us with hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, pestilence, famine, pandemics. These things come out of nature, and none of them are really good. So we can't just sit there with the easy assumption that natural equals good, unnatural equals bad. There are certain cases where the natural is good and the unnatural is bad, but it requires you to do a little more of a detailed examination of the example or the case. Otherwise, just a blanket assumption, natural things are good, unnatural things are bad, that leads to the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so what I want to do now then, to sort of get your mind ready for the quiz, is I'm just going to list all the fallacies one time, and then that'll have everything up on the board, and then we'll just kind of bounce around and go over different examples and see if you can identify cases. So I'll list them according to the three categories they fall in. So here we have fallacies of ambiguity, then fallacies of relevance, finally fallacies of unwarranted assumption. Okay, 3 categories of fallacies, and we're just going to put them all here. So fallacies of ambiguity. Who knows the names of some of them? Let's see if you could just list them, and then I'll put them up here as we go over them as a group. Fallacies of ambiguity, not all at once. Just tell me what's one of them that you know. Back to the first meeting on fallacies. That was 2 lectures ago, basically. Or, sorry, 3, last week, Tuesday. Okay, equivocation. I see amphiboly, fallacy of accent. Two more, fallacy of division. And then there's one more. And then you also have your fallacy of composition. Okay, those are 5 fallacies of ambiguity listed here. So the next category, fallacies of relevance, there's 8. So who knows the name of at least one of those fallacies of relevance? Okay, I see ignorance, red herring, good. So there's appeal to ignorance. There's red herring. There's also, I'm looking at your list here, there's personal attack. Appeal to force. The popular appeal to pity. Two more, straw man and the hasty generalization. Okay, straw man, and finally last, hasty and small, sorry for that, generalization. Okay, so there's 8 fallacies of relevance there. And then to the final category that we've just now wrapped up, fallacies of unwarranted assumption. What's found in that column? So, there's loaded question, okay. Loaded question, begging the question. And the appeal to authority, inappropriate appeal to authority. Questionable cause. Loaded question, begging question, appeal to authority, questionable cause, false dilemma, slippery slope. And then finally, the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Okay, that's the full range of 20, as you see here displayed just on the whiteboard. So that gives us a nice ability to refer easily to them just by me pointing or gesturing at it. It's inappropriate appeal to authority, correct, Alex. I was kind of a little like short on space, but I can respect being precise. So let's just put it in there. And go read it. It's going to be hard. I'll have to rewrite it, but that's fine. It's a subtle point, but it's worth mentioning because it's not necessarily bad to appeal to the right authority in a field where they are an expert. So if I say, like, Dr. Fauci said that wearing masks is good, and he is an infectious disease specialist who's in the chair of that position in our government for like 4 years, that is a reasonable appeal to authority. But if I say, Dr. Atlas, who's a radiologist who doesn't know anything about infectious diseases, says masks don't work, but he's not the right authority to appeal to. Anyway, well, that's just one throwaway example off the top of my head. So when you get this quiz on Monday, what's going to show up is a list of fallacy arguments, and then, like, on the front half of the form, well, there's no halves. I'm thinking of the old days of paper, but page 1 is going to just have the arguments that contain fallacies in them, like your homework did, and then you'll have to give me the name. Except instead of being restricted to just this one column, it's just all 20 are on the table as options. So front page, name that fallacy. Back page, you have to give an example of a fallacy based on the name that is listed there. Okay, so let's just try and see if we can spot some different examples given, if you can identify, given an example, what the name is for a few different cases. Okay. So when I woke up this morning, it was overcast. So it was kind of like a gloomy day. And then later on in the day, I received a report that my dog is sick and needs to go to the hospital, and it could be a serious issue. So I'm concluding that this bad weather that I saw in the morning was like a bad omen, which causes the dog to have the problem later in the day. So what do you think? Wake up to gloomy skies. Later on, you got to take your dog to the vet, and you claim that there must have been some type of connection between those two things. What could that be? Questionable cause. Good, Alex. So there's no relationship at all between the weather and its condition and some totally separate health issue with a person's dog, for example. So a superstitious belief that assigns cause and effect between the two things could be a questionable cause. All right, cool. How about this? Robert and Daniel have no idea what to do about his girlfriend. It's a sentence, but it's problematic. What do you think is the example given here? Robert and Daniel have no idea what to do about his girlfriend. And we're saying that's what? Good, Clarissa. Amphibole, right. Because in the way I've phrased that statement, there's two male subjects, and the reference to the girlfriend is his girlfriend, but it becomes ambiguous grammatically to whom the pronoun refers. Okay? So grammatical ambiguity is the amphibole fallacy. That's right. Okay, I got another one. Committing a crime is immoral because breaking the law is just wrong. What do you think that would be? So the argument says breaking the law is just wrong, and therefore committing a crime is immoral. What would that be? See if anyone has a guess. Okay, Clarissa, begging the question. Good guess. Why though? Let's explain. Why is it begging the question when a person frames an argument in that way, which says, again, it's it's just wrong to commit a crime, and therefore breaking law is immoral. Why is it begging the question? It is circular, right? But let's be very precise as to why. Because it does say the same thing twice. Okay, because what is it to commit a crime? In other words, another way of saying the same thing. Committing a crime is equivalent, is equal to doing what? Breaking the law, right. So breaking law is committing a crime, and saying that something is just wrong is the same as saying that it is immoral. So if I say to you, it's wrong to break the law, and therefore it's immoral to commit a crime, it's just saying the same thing twice. It's wrong to commit a crime, therefore it's wrong to commit a crime. Is it wrong to commit a crime? I mean, it depends on what the crime is, I suppose, but if it is wrong, you have to give an argument as to why it's wrong that doesn't just repeat the conclusion in a slightly different phrasing. Okay? Good. All right, let's see. So suppose that somebody made a case about something to you. Let me think about what the argument could be. Your doctor, who you go to for a diagnosis, he looks at your MRI scan, and he says, based on the findings in this MRI, if you look here at this cloudy region in your in the scan, it shows that there's been like leaking of fluid in your hip area from a burst sac of nerves there from some injury that you've incurred. So you're going to have to immobilize yourself from the hip down for like a month to let it heal. So he gives you his diagnosis. He says, we can see on the MRI scan that you have this hip condition and it's going to require you to be immobilized. And you say back to him, no way, come on, that can't possibly be true. For example, yesterday I was watching a video of you, doctor, online, and I saw that you were trying to play basketball and you couldn't even shoot the ball. You barely could even hold it. Like, I mean, you try to shoot the ball, it flew behind you or something. It was the most pathetic thing I ever saw. So I don't know. I'm going to have to get a second opinion. What do you think that is? I can't listen to your clinical diagnosis because you need to learn how to shoot the basketball. It's a personal attack. Good. It's a personal attack. It's saying this guy's got no, he can't ball, he's got no athletic skill, and therefore he must not have any knowledge when it comes to medicine and clinical diagnosis. But that's totally unrelated. It's a personal attack. It does not undermine his argument. It simply provides an unrelated ad hominem as a basis for disputing his conclusion or his reasoning. Okay, personal attack. All right. Let's see. Okay, so let's get another one. I'm thinking about it. Patient. Okay, so here we go. Yes, good question, Sean. Personal attack and ad hominem mean the same. I might ask it as an ad hominem question, or I might ask it as a personal attack question. Your response could be either one, and it would be same credit. Okay, good question. Okay, let's see next. I had it in my mind, and then I thought of your question, and I kind of lost it. So maybe I'll come back to that. Okay. So somebody says, this is the most important election that we've faced in a long time. The stakes are so high because we're facing a pandemic and climate change and social unrest. So I think because of all these difficulties, this is one of the most important things for people to do is to vote this time. And somebody says, no way, that's not one of the most important things. What I think is more important than that is, let me think. What's more important than the election? Somebody says, Kimberly, I want to get your question. Why is the doctor example not red herring if basketball has nothing to do with the medical field? Oh, because it's a person who made the diagnosis who's being attacked. So red herring, I was about to give you a red herring right here. But in the red herring case, you distract from the original topic, but not in a way that pursues some type of personal attack against the person who's making the argument. So that's the difference there. The person says, here's a diagnosis, and you're saying your diagnosis is invalid because you don't know how to dribble. That is telling the person that you don't have a valid argument because you have this problem that's unrelated to the argument itself. All of the unwarranted assumption fallacies are somewhere in that ballpark of being, you know, you're not justified, or no, sorry, I'm mentioning the wrong category, relevance. All of the relevance fallacies have to do with the information given to reject the argument not being relevant to the argument itself. So in a personal attack fallacy, you attack the person who presents the argument. In the red herring fallacy, you just try to change the topic away from the original conversation piece. Now, they're both in the same category. That's what I was awkwardly trying to express just now. Since they're both within the same category of fallacies of relevance, it's bound to carry over some association from the other members of the same group because they all have that feeling that something's irrelevant here. It's irrelevant to bring up the fact that he can't play basketball as a reason to disagree with his medical diagnosis. And yes, in red herring, the topic that we changed to is not relevant to the original topic. So they all have this kind of family resemblance that there's some irrelevance involved in the presentation of the fallacy. But the nature of the irrelevance is different here because what's irrelevant here is some attack leveled against the human that made the argument. What's irrelevant here is the new subject matter itself, okay? So if the person said back to the doctor, what do you mean I have a problem with my hip? The real problem is immigration. You know, that would be like a red herring. It's the person trying to change the topic but not attack the person who's giving the argument. Does that make sense to you, Kimberly? Have I explained it better? Let me know. I don't want to leave anybody with any kind of confusion. I gave the example involving making a personal attack against the person. To be honest with you, I was kind of thinking about Trump and Fauci. You want to hear it? Because Fauci says we got to wear masks, and he's an infectious disease specialist. But then he went up on the mound and he couldn't pitch the baseball. Okay, so you want to get right into it. He couldn't pitch the baseball. So then the argument given by the right and Trump is, this man is not qualified to give us opinions on medicine because have you seen how badly he threw the baseball? That's a personal attack. It doesn't have anything to do with his knowledge about medicine. And I guess he was pretty bad at throwing the baseball. Not the greatest PR move, I guess, for him because it was supposed to look cool, but it didn't. Okay, so anyway, there you go. Let's do another one. Somebody says to you, okay, please allow me to take this quiz at another day because last week I was reading a novel and it was so tragic what ended up happening to the main character at the end that I've just been shook up for like 2 weeks straight and I can't focus on my studies. So I really would love to have an extension of time. What's up with that? Fallacy. This one I'm giving you a softball. Appeal to pity. Good. Pretty straightforward. It's just pity. The person says, feel sorry for me, grant me pity, grant me an exception to the rule. But the request, the ask, is minor, insignificant, and not relevant to the circumstances of whether they could have prepared for the test. Okay. Let's try another. Somebody says to you, okay, either you are in favor of legalizing all the drugs, or you want to permanently criminalize all of them. So tell me what's your position. Is it full-scale legalization of all drugs, or do you think they should all be 100% universally prohibited? Okay, false dilemma, correct. Why is that a false dilemma though? There's two choices, total prohibition or total legalization. But why is it a false dilemma? You're saying that there's more than two options. What's another one? You're correct, it is false dilemma, but I'm just asking you to dig in there a little more. Since you know it's a false dilemma, how do you know that? What's the reason that that's the right answer? The question or the example was, which way are you going to stand on this issue? Is it full-blown legalization of everything or total criminalization of all psychoactive drugs? Because it's an either-or question and it reduces the responses. Yes, but in particular, what is another possibility besides having either of those two positions? Is it true that people either want all the drugs to be illegal or they favor all of them to be legalized? Some might say, okay, legalize some and not others. Exactly. Like some people may say there's some drugs where legalization is reasonable, but then there are others which are either too addictive or just too dangerous for them to be legalized. So by trying to put people in a box of saying like it's either all or nothing, that's always like the way that the false dilemma looks. Okay. All right. What time did you go to bed last night? What is that? What time did you go to bed last night? That's a straightforward one. What do you think? Loaded question, good. Because why is it a loaded question? What's assumed in the question that maybe we don't know? It's a loaded question, yes. It's assuming the person did go to bed, and so we're just asking what time it is. Some people, I guess, didn't sleep last night, and therefore they couldn't give an answer as to when they went to bed because it just didn't happen. Or you say, Matthew, that it was late. What time did you go to bed last night? Well, the assumption is just that they went to bed at all. I mean, to be honest, though, Matthew, if you're thinking, don't people always all go to bed? I kind of can relate to that because I've never been one of those people that boasts and brags about, oh, I could go on no sleep, I could pull an all-nighter, I'm on 3 days right now, blah, blah, blah. I could never do that. To me, that's just out of control. I'm the opposite. I'm sleeping 100% of the time. It's hard to get me out of bed. So anyway, though, I know a lot of people, and especially young people, pull all-nighters and don't need as much sleep perhaps. But anyway, yeah, some people don't sleep. And therefore, to ask the question, when did you sleep last night, might be a loaded question to a person like that. Okay, great. Let's see what else we have. How about... Okay, let's try another one here. The problem with some students is that they're open-minded to the idea of not going to a class, even though there's no reason that they can't attend. They just choose not to go. And let me tell you, you really should never do that. You should never once in your life say, I could go to class, but I'm just going to skip it. Because it may seem like just a small decision. You're just going to skip the one class. Maybe you want some free time. You just want to kind of have some space and time away from your studies. But when you do that, then you're going to keep doing it. And after a while, you're going to stop following any of your obligations. So it's not just going to stop with, I didn't go to class today. It's going to be, well, I didn't turn in the assignment. And then it's going to be like, maybe I'll just drop out of school. And then maybe it'll be like, I don't know, maybe I'll just quit on my job or my relationships or the people who count on me. Pretty soon you're a totally unreliable person. You can never do anything that you signed up for. No one can count on you. And you're basically not to be trusted. And you're out of the circle of acquaintance with anybody. That's a slippery slope, right, Sebastian? It's saying that from one decision to not attend a class, it's just going to be a snowball effect. And it's going to keep on getting worse and worse. After a while, you won't do anything that you said that you would do. And who wants to really know you at that point? You ruin your life by even missing the one class. Clearly, it's a slippery slope. People have to make decisions about how to manage their time, and sometimes you need a little break or a little rest. That's not unreasonable. Of course, you don't want to do it habitually, because I guess it could build into a habit, but this is a bit of a hyperbolic overstatement of what the probable consequence of missing one class is. So that's slippery slope. Okay. Let's see what else. So in my let me think. I'm trying to think of a case. Okay, well, I can't tell you what I'm thinking of, I guess, otherwise it'll spoil it. My biology teacher told me that there's great empirical evidence for Darwin's theory of evolution if you look at the fossil record of different animals, including human beings. So therefore, I believe it. And somebody says, no, come on, that's not a good argument, because I know they teach us that in school, but I was talking to my dad yesterday. My dad, by the way, he's just a real estate investor, and he says there's nothing true at all about evolution theory. So I'm going with my dad on this one, not the biology professor. What do you think? What would that be? We relying on the testimony of the investor. Inappropriate appeal to authority. Good, yeah. So a person's outside their field of knowledge and expertise, rendering an opinion on something that they're not really qualified to talk about. It's funny though, sometimes people have so much confidence and trust in people's opinions who are just not qualified to even talk. And that happens all the time. That's inappropriate appeal to authority. I guess sometimes it has to do with who you trust. It's weird. I feel like sometimes in our country, at least, there's this anti-expertise attitude. Like people are just skeptical of people who are experts, right? But you don't just become an expert like randomly. It's not like they just hand out these PhDs and on the street corner. You have to really work hard, and you have to be thoroughly vetted, and you have to be judged and evaluated over and over and over again to prove yourself. So, I mean, why place unwarranted trust in non-qualified opinions and then be a person who's like, I'm not sure. Does the scientists really know what they're talking about? Does the, does the professional expert who gets paid to do this for a living and who's dedicated their whole life to it, do they really know? Maybe I should just talk to my friends and read stuff on blogs. This is the wrong way to go about life. But anyway, we all understand that, I think. Okay, let me give another case. Trying to think of, okay. Okay, here we go, got it. So cop pulls the person over, and there's an open container sitting right there in the cup holder, alcoholic drink. So that's not allowed while you're driving. And the cop says, I have to arrest you basically for driving under the influence. Does the breathalyzer, he sees that this person's drunk. And he says, why did you do this, sir? Don't you understand there's rules? We have laws. You can't drink and drive. And the guy says back, I know, I thought that I understood that. You guys say don't drink and drive. I drank this thing before I started driving. I pounded it, put it to the side, and then started driving. I'm not drinking and driving. I'm drinking, then driving. Okay, so what's wrong with that? It's the fallacy of accent. Good. What's the accented word which leads to the misinterpretation? When they say, yeah, well, you can tell me. It's clear. It is the fallacy of accent, and the word being emphasized, which is changing the meaning around, is the word and, with, all caps or bolded or something. So when people say don't drink and drive, what does that actually mean? It doesn't literally mean it's okay to drink and then drive afterwards, but you just can't do them simultaneously. Like, you're just not supposed to literally have the wheel while you're drinking. That's not what it means. It means don't be intoxicated while you drive. Don't have the effect of alcohol working on your system when you're behind the wheel operating the vehicle. So when a person says, I thought it was don't drink and drive, you could just do them one at a time. Drive, then drink, then drive, but just not simultaneously. That would clearly be a fallacy of accent. Just kind of a funny example, okay? So let's see what's next. Okay, here we go. I don't know, what's a very poor country on this planet? I mean, there's a lot of them, but maybe you can suggest something. Country that's got a lot of poverty. There's a lot of, sub-Saharan Africa, Western Africa type countries that are very poor. There's a lot of hunger and poverty. Maybe I'll just say like Ghana or something. I had a friend that worked in the Peace Corps and after college, and they were in Ghana for like a year working on educational assistance and like humanitarian aid. So anyway, they could tell me that it was very poor. All right, so Ghana, one of the poorest nations. The president of Ghana is a citizen, so he's one of the poorest people. What is that? Ghana is a very, very poor nation, and the leader of Ghana is a citizen there, so he's a poor individual. What would that be? You heard the example. Let's see what you think. Any, good, division fallacy, that's right. Well, no, not composition, Clarissa and Sean. It's division because keep in mind the format of division. Division starts with the group and concludes down to the individual parts. So it goes from whole to part. Division, like start with something big and you divide down to something small. Composition is the opposite. We start with a claim about an individual or a part, and then you build up to, you compose to a claim about the whole that it's a part of. So this would be division. Because the country's poor, one part of the country must be poor, but that's not necessarily true. Just like we could say with wealth. The United States is the wealthiest nation, you're a citizen, so you're the wealthiest person, but that does not necessarily follow. Okay, and composition would be of the other kind. I'm a professor of philosophy. My last name is Vulic, so all the members of my family are professors of philosophy. This is not true. It's definitely just me. So, I'm a member of a family, and I have certain qualities and features, but my whole family doesn't necessarily have them either. And we could go back to division again using the case of families. Say the Smith family is loud. Like when they get together, there's a lot of loud, jovial, talking and joking and festivities like that. So the Smith family is loud. John is a member of the Smith family, so John is loud. But that doesn't necessarily follow. There can always be, the member of the family that's a bit different, a breed apart from the others. So you got another case of division, I guess. All right. I don't know how many others are yet to be given. Okay, I think I know one that we did not talk about yet. So somebody says, it's about time that we addressed climate change. It's really important because with water levels rising globally, we could undermine coastal regions' stability if we don't curb emissions in a way that stops the ice caps from melting. So we have a big problem with climate change. Maybe if we could gradually reduce our emissions over the next century, we could hit targets that will allow us to maintain our status quo. So here comes the opponent, and the opponent says, what you're saying is insane, because if we no longer have energy production on the planet Earth, then it's going to destroy the global economy, and we're all just going to be living with like torch lights, and we're not going to have any kind of energy infrastructure that we can rely on. So I don't agree with your argument that we need to address climate change, because what you're saying is eliminate all energy production, and that's critical to the global economy. What is that fallacy? What do you think? Person A says, climate change is a problem, so let us have gradual reduction of emissions to hit our emissions targets in the next century. Person B says, what an insane argument. If we don't have any more energy, then how are we going to even drive around? What, are we going to just walk? We can't have airplanes, we can't have cars. It's a straw man. Good, Celine. How is it a straw man? Well, if you remember, straw man is the fallacy where you take your original opponent's argument and you mischaracterize it and make it sound more extreme or oversimplified than what it really was, so as to make it appear much easier to discredit and to refute. So the original argument in this exchange was, global warming is a problem, and maybe if we take some measured, gradual steps towards changing our production of energy, then we'll do better. But the opponent of the argument says, what you've claimed is total abolition of all energy forms of production, and that makes it sound like it's a ridiculous or extreme radical idea. But that's not what the person said, so that would be strawman. Okay. So like one part of the quiz anyway is like this. You see an example, and you have to think in your mind, what's the name of the fallacy that corresponds to the example? Okay, good question, Hannah, and I was thinking maybe someone would ask that. I'll get back to what I was just saying, but I want to take your question for now. What's the difference between fallacy of composition and hasty generalization? Well, I understand that they're quite similar in a way, because composition starts with a claim about an individual, and then it draws the inference that all members of a group from which the individual is drawn or sorry, the group as a whole rather, has the same quality. And in hasty generalization, we jump to a conclusion of all based on limited experience or biased sample. So how are they different? Well, it's subtle, but the difference is this, that with composition, we're more essentially talking about part-whole relations. So like the cells in my body, they cannot be seen with the naked eye, therefore my body cannot be seen with the naked eye. That would be a composition fallacy because literally my body is composed of those parts. With hasty generalization, it's more in the realm of limited experience before you jump to a conclusion. So not enough cases, not enough experience before you reach that universal claim. So like I could say, I had one bad relationship with a woman and another bad relationship with a woman, so I feel like all women cheat or something like that. That's not saying that there's a part-whole relationship that's been misapplied, but rather my experience with a certain type of event has been used to generalize too quickly. So clearer cases of composition are when there is like a literal part-whole relation. The student got an A, so the whole class got an A. That would be like composition fallacy, right? Because the student is a part of just what makes the class up. But if I thought, for example, that a couple of my friends were conservative, and therefore all college students are conservative, it's not like those friends that I have are necessarily parts of the set of all college students. They're just part of like my friends. So it's a subtle distinction. I'm not going to insist on it too much. On the quiz, I'll tell you this. There's not going to be any example of a fallacy that's repeated twice. So you can kind of use a little bit of deduction to determine whether or not a given example is going to be of either of these two kinds. On the back side of the quiz, there's going to be the names of fallacies, and then you'll have to give an example. So if I say on the back side of the quiz, like hasty generalization, and then on the front side of the quiz, there's like a example that kind of looks like hasty generalization, you would know that it's not, because I'm not going to use the same kind of fallacy twice on the quiz. So that is a hint for you that might be helpful if such a question came up. Okay. All right, now what I was saying just prior to that is that it's good for you not only to be able to hear examples and then make a judgment what fallacy it is, but to create your own examples that you think match the definition of a fallacy. So if you have those ready to go, that'll be of benefit to you on the quiz so that you can refer to the examples that you've already given and put them in the quiz. Does anybody have an example? Let's see. I'd like to maybe ask you guys that. Let's try our best to state some examples and we'll see what you come up with. Maybe you can make it a little bit of a more interactive experience by not telling us what the fallacy is, and then we'll try to judge. Marissa, when we provide our own example, should they be in standard form or in the format like the homework? Also a good question. So for this particular quiz, I was not going to insist on you writing it out in the standard form when you give an example, only because many of the examples from the book in this chapter deviate from the strictness of standard form and just report the argument as like a piece of dialogue or a statement given by an individual. So because they depart a little bit from the more strict presentation of standard form, I'm going to allow it on the quiz too. So your examples may be in standard form or they may be written informally, as long as they clearly contain a case of the fallacy that you're trying to display. So don't worry too much about standard form on this quiz. That's okay. So thanks for that question there, Marissa. So all right, let's see. Can I go over example of fallacies of ambiguity? Well, what do you mean by your question, Clarissa? Are you asking me to talk about these 5? Or are you just talking about the definition of the category? You want more examples of which fallacies of ambiguity, because the question about it is ambiguous. There's 5 of them. Maybe you can help me understand that a little more clearly. Oh, equivocation. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's a good one. All right, sorry. So we need a word that has multiple meanings that could be misinterpreted by having those two different meanings. So let's see. All right, here we go. I'm in the, okay. John said that he's in a disturbed state, and John is in the state of California, so therefore the state of California is a disturbed state. Okay, what is that? That's equivocation. You're asking for an example, but let's analyze the example, okay? Why is that equivocation, and what do you think? The word gay does have many meanings. There's the word meaning happy. It's its classic meaning before it was assigned as a label for sexual orientation. But back to my question, and we'll get to yours too, Jillian. John is in a very disturbed state, and he's in the state of California, and therefore California is a disturbed state. If that is equivocation, then what word is being equivocated on? And what are the multiple meanings possible? Okay, well, it is the wrong definition to what kind of state? Well, let's be more precise. There's no wrong definition. Those are two different definitions. But the problem is that it changes. Okay, so like in the first premise, when he says he's in a disturbed state, what does the word state mean in that sentence? That he's in a disturbed, like mental state, like he's in a disturbed condition psychologically, right? He's losing his mind, going crazy or something. That's a bad term. He's becoming mentally ill or whatever. And in the second sentence, which says he's in the state of California, now in that case, we don't mean psychological state, but rather geographic state, like which state in the United States. Now, by changing the meaning of state in premise 1 and 2, it looks like the conclusion follows, but really it doesn't, because we've equivocated on that key term. So he's in a disturbed state, he's in the state of California, therefore the state of California is a disturbed state, is an incorrect inference to draw because the meaning of state has changed halfway through the argument. So that's how equivocation works. You're going to see a word pop up twice. And in the two positions where it occurs, it has different meanings, leading to a conclusion that just doesn't follow from the two premises or from however many premises there are. Okay? What other questions? If you have more questions, I'll take them whenever. Good, thanks, Clarissa. Like earlier in the lecture series, when we introduced equivocation, we gave examples like John's at the bank and the banks lend money, so he's at a place that lends money, but bank has multiple meanings. Use the word gay, Jillian. That could generate an example. Okay, so John graduated, and he was happy and gay because of the achievement. And a gay person is attracted to members of their own sex. So therefore, when he graduated, he became attracted to a member of the same sex. That would be equivocation fallacy because of the trading of different meanings on the word gay. Now, it's certainly the less common usage nowadays. I think it's kind of become subsumed by the sexual orientation signification of the word. But there is, of course, still that alternative meaning. You've ever watched the Flintstones, anybody? The old TV show? They'll have a gay old time. It's like the last line of the theme song. Anyway, little pop culture reference from back in the day. What other questions may you have? Or if anybody has an example, let me see your example of some type of fallacy, and then maybe we can try to judge which one it is. Anybody have an idea? Because I've given you a lot of them so far. Part of what you have to do is create some examples of your own, so maybe you've got something. Anything at all. Or if there's more discussion that you want on one or more of those examples or topics, we can go back to it. Like I said, today is not a typical lecture. It's just a review of the different fallacies to give you more practice getting ready for the upcoming quiz. So more examples, the better. Let me maybe direct you to something. I mean, I guess I'm asking you to come up with one that you don't tell us which one it is. so that we could all kind of be like, which fallacy is it? But if you don't have one at your disposal, another example of appeal to ignorance besides the aliens? Okay, good one, Jennifer. So, well, one of them from the homework that you guys submitted, well, I can come up with some similar to that. Somebody says, you know, okay, some of my packages have been missing. Suppose that's the case. Somebody's been ordering stuff off Amazon and their packages have gone missing. So they determine in their mind that the packages must have been taken or stolen, and the only reason they say that is because nobody can prove that they haven't been stolen. Maybe there's no like surveillance equipment anywhere. Maybe nobody sees anybody taking them or not taking them, and so the person just has this belief they've been stolen, and my evidence is that nobody can prove otherwise. Well, that could be an appeal to ignorance fallacy. I mean, you'd have to have perhaps some reason to think that they were stolen as opposed to having failed to have been delivered properly or maybe supplied with the wrong address. Any case in which you say something's true because no one can prove the opposite is an example of appeal to ignorance. You say to somebody, you are cheating on me, and I'm telling you that because you can't prove that you're not. Somebody says, okay, this country is developing, like, so suppose that there's an adversary to the United States somewhere in the world, like a country that is kind of like an enemy to the United States. Suppose that the United States develops a belief that they're building a powerful nuclear submarine to blow us up, but they have no evidence of it. And so they just say, we believe that you're doing this because you can't prove that you're not. That would be the appeal to ignorance fallacy. In fact, something much like that happened with the war in Iraq. You guys know about the war in Iraq that started in 2003, not the first Gulf War from '91, but the more recent 2003 under George W. Bush. So he believed, and some people, I guess, in the intelligence community believed, that Saddam Hussein was developing weapons of mass destruction, you know. And in the wake of 9/11, I guess some people up there high in the government and in the defense industry believed that we should take very seriously the possibility of any threat against the United States. So the argument was being made, Saddam is building these weapons of mass destruction, so we should go and invade the country to stop him. And he was saying to the United States and to the United Nations and everybody that would listen, no, we don't have these weapons. No, we're not developing them. Stop saying that. Please don't attack us because there's no weapons of mass destruction. We don't even have a program to build them, on and on and on. Well, the United States was like, you can't prove that you're not building them. So we just assume that you are. And of course, as it was discovered later, after we invaded and spent trillions of dollars and 100,000 dead Iraqis and 5,000 dead Americans and countless more wounded, then we had to admit, oh, never mind, there weren't these weapons. But the original claim was, we think you're building them because you cannot prove otherwise. It's very hard to prove a negative. They actually said to the United Nations, well, come and do weapons inspections then. Bring your best weapons inspections team into our country, and you can verify for yourself that we don't have the weapons. But the United States wouldn't allow them to complete their mission before we started launching the attack. So is it based on the person's opinion? Why does the person believe it if there's no evidence for it, just the absence of contrary evidence? Well, it's probably because the person wants to think that it's true. So you form a belief, you've got no evidence, and then you kind of just put the burden of proof on somebody that disagrees with you. You say to somebody else, if you don't believe me, you have to prove that I'm wrong. And if you can't, then I assume the default position that I'm right. What is it based on? A person's opinion? This is a tough question you're asking. I mean, it could be based on a person's desire when they make an argument that's an appeal to ignorance. Because generally speaking, you wouldn't want to affirm something that's got no evidence behind it. It must be a favored hypothesis then. It must be a hypothesis that you wish to be true, and you just don't want to have to prove it. So your only appeal to evidence is ignorance of the contrary being disproven. All right, so more on the appeal to ignorance fallacy. If there's more you want, I could go into it further. But good, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, trying to think of additional examples of something that happens in everyday life. If you have, like, say, a conspiracy theory, and then you just say, I believe it because no one can prove otherwise, that's another kind of case of appeal to ignorance. You know, somebody says, I think the moon landing didn't happen because you can't prove that it did, but it's kind of a bad example because there is ample proof of that. Maybe something else, like I believe that over at Area 51 there's aliens, because you can't prove that there's no aliens there. You know, there was like a funny, I don't know, kind of, you guys remember that on Twitter a while back when everyone was saying, let's go and just rush Area 51, and a bunch of people run up there to just see if there's actually aliens or not. Anyway, in reference to that whole episode, some people might claim something's true even though they have no evidence, and then they simply make the claim based on nobody being able to disprove it. So if there's no existing disproof, then they use that as the reason to say it's true. Okay, so yeah, just let me know. More questions, or if you have an example of anything, put that in the chat. Maybe I'll direct you to give me an example if you can. Okay. How about if the quiz says to you, write down an example of straw man, what would you write? If you were looking at the quiz right now and that was one of the questions, what would you write down? So it says, write down an example of a straw man fallacy. Now, it can be like dialogue. It could be like, so person A says such and such. Person B says blah, 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 if you want, right? It's probably one of the easier ways to characterize this example of a fallacy because it has to do with the back and forth between people, or a representation, a misrepresentation of somebody's argument. So go ahead. Let's see what you can think of. Straw man. Go ahead, let me know. Get it in there. Just think of a topic that people debate, where people have different views, different sides. And the format that you have to come up with is, the first individual makes a reasonable argument. The second individual says, well, let me understand you. And then they restate something, but it's not their argument, and it's a worse, messed up version of it that doesn't sound plausible at all. So, you know, let's go through it step by step. If you're not able to give me the example just immediately, or if you're working on it, please continue to do it. But for all those hearing me, what's a debated topic? What's some topic that people generally can have differences of opinion on? Politics, policy, or anything else. Biden says taxes will be increased on the rich. Pence says they're going to raise taxes on everyone after administration works so hard to lower taxes. Okay, yeah, interesting. So we see that exact exchange happening in some of these political debates, and you gave the example. So as Biden's argument goes, he wants to repeal the Trump tax cuts. And in particular, he said that people making over $400,000 a year are going to have their tax rates changed back to the rates that were effective before the tax cuts of Trump. But people that make less than $400,000 will not see, you know, the line is a dime of their taxes increased. So that's like the nuanced argument in terms of the tax cut repeal. But then opponents of the argument say, oh, well, let us understand what you're saying. Everyone gets a massive tax hike, the biggest in history, and so the middle class is going to struggle to pay their bills. That could be a straw man if it misrepresents the original content of the argument. That's a policy debate. It's tricky. I mean, some people think that there's like the trickle-down economic theory, that if the people that are the highest earners and job creators and stuff, if they are burdened with higher tax rates, that's going to affect their desire to hire and everything. But that's more for another day and another conversation. But yeah, that's a good example. Politics is an easy supply for all types of examples of these different fallacies. I'm trying to think of one that could go in the other direction to kind of make sure there's balance. So let me think. Can anybody think of one where the conservative position is misrepresented? I think that Pete Rose should be reinstated into baseball since he only bet on his team to win and it has been so long. Okay. Oh, well, Matthew, that's fine. Maybe you were coming up with a a different conversation and then this one ended up in here, or you submitted it on accident. Well, it's an interesting point about Pete Rose. You really think he should be reinstated, though? I mean, it was kind of unethical, don't you believe, to bet on baseball? I mean, that's his sport, so he's trying to profit off of his own sport using insider knowledge. Seemed kind of unethical, but, you know, he was a decent player for sure. Abortion, interesting mention there, Jennifer. So, yeah, in abortion, sometimes people definitely create straw man arguments. Here's one. Pro-life person says abortion should not be permitted because it ends the life of a human being, and the human being has a right to life from the very first moment that their heart starts beating, so it should be prohibited. And maybe somebody says back to them, okay, well, let me understand what you're saying. What, women shouldn't be able to vote? Women shouldn't be able to leave the house? Women can't, you know, do anything without the permission of the husband? That sounds insane, and that sounds really regressive, so I can't agree with your position on women, on abortion. But, you know, a person fairly enough could have an anti-abortion point of view, but be, you know, progressive with a range of other women's issues. On the other side of the coin, somebody could say a woman should have a right to choose. If a woman doesn't have a right to choose, then she's going to have to make very dangerous decisions about how to deal with a complicated pregnancy or one that she's not prepared to see through. Furthermore, the fetus is not yet fully sentient, and the process is painless if it's done early enough. And then suppose the conservative critic of the position says, let me understand what you're saying. It's okay to kill babies? Really? So you can kill them when they're newborn? You can kill a toddler? I mean, at what point are you going to draw a line? It sounds like you have no respect for human life, period. So what? We should be able to just kill children? It sounds like you're insane. But that's not the person's position, right? I mean, anybody who's in favor of pro-choice does not hold a position in favor of infanticide, but, you know, you've seen people make that argument that if you believe in abortion, then you don't have a problem with newborns being killed either. It's definitely a different argument. Okay, so, you know, I'm giving you thoughts about how to construct straw man examples, since we talked about it just most recently in this meeting today. Well, anyway, as it comes to the overall concept of fallacies, I'll just close the discussion with this. Don't always be so obsessed with winning an argument that you resort to bad arguments. That's why a lot of people commit these fallacies, because they don't want to be the loser of the argument. They don't want to be the person who has to concede that someone else had a better argument. And so people will then resort to the worst forms of reasoning just so that it seems like they have a winning hand in a discussion. But ironically, it undermines their position in argument more than if they were just unwilling to commit a fallacy. So listen to other people, try to be clear, try not to be ambiguous and vague. Don't confuse the argument that someone is making with the character of the person who's making it. Sometimes people make arguments with conclusions that you don't like, but that does not mean that you have to question this person's motives as though they're a bad person or something just for having a different set of beliefs than you do. So no need to get personal and get into ad hominems and all that. Know your topic. Don't jump to wild conclusions if you don't have the facts and research to back yourself up. And be willing to be skeptical. You know, just understand that everyone can be wrong. Everyone can make errors, including you. So enter into an argument with the interest in developing a better understanding, not necessarily always being the winner. Watch your body language. Sometimes, you know, you will betray signs of annoyance, frustration, anger, or whatever in the way you discuss a topic of conversation. And sometimes that detracts from the substance of what's being discussed. So that's just a couple of additional, like, kind of closing thoughts on how to balance, you know, the activity of everyday life with some kind of standards of accuracy, honesty intellectually, and fairness with other people when you deal with them and making arguments. Okay, so that's everything, I guess, for today. Thanks, everyone, for getting us through this meeting. Just a little bit different because of the way it was a lot of review, but hopefully that helps you with your quiz on Monday. So over the weekend, I'm going to send off the answer key for the last homework, and I'm also almost done with the grading of the midterm. So I'll be done with both of those things. Then you can check for your score on all the previous assignments if you want. Just send me an email anytime after I send the announcement on Friday morning. And then we're looking forward to our quiz. There's no meeting on Monday. It's just a quiz. But I'll have my inbox open if anyone has any questions or anything else. I'll be answering my emails during the quiz and throughout the day. Okay, guys, so are y'all good? Everyone's good to go then for Wednesday? Let me know in the chat, and if so, thanks again. Okay, great. Well, have a good day then, and we'll be in touch. I'll see you guys next time.